In this lesson, we're going to talk about assembly features. Let's open up a special assembly just for this lesson. If you open up from the Chapter 11 folder, there's a subfolder called Engine, and in there you'll have an engine for assembly features. Now, assembly features can be found on Assembly Toolbar under the same icon where we found the whole series. The whole series, you'll remember from a previous lesson, created an in-context whole through numerous parts, and it also left a feature in the top-level assembly. So in that way, it's different from most in-context parts because it leaves a feature in the assembly, and it's also different from most assembly features because it left a feature in the part as well. So whole series have already been covered, and we can just think of them as a special case of assembly features. What we're going to do in this lesson is to use an extruded cut as an assembly feature, and we'll also look at the chamfer feature. Assembly features are typically features that are only created when parts of the assembly are put together. For example, with this engine, to make sure everything lines up properly, the manufacturer may put both the engine block and the oil pan in a fixture, and then drill the mounting holes separately, just to make sure everything lines up. And so we'll follow that same process here inside the CAD tool instead of in the factory. So here in the context of the assembly, without editing any parts, let's sketch a circle on this flat face. Wake up the center so we can draw a circle that's concentric with the pocket, and also place a diameter dimension of 0.375. From here, I'll go back to the Assembly tab and use the extruded cut. I'll pull this down to a certain depth. You may want to key in something specific like 1.25 inches to make sure that it doesn't break through. With the feature scope, we can specify which parts of the assembly are affected by this cut. You'll remember that we used the feature scope when we worked with multiple bodies within a single part. It's the same idea here, except that it's parts within the assembly instead of bodies within the part. So instead of auto select, we can be specific about which parts this will affect. It will affect the oil pan and the engine block, as cut through both parts. If we take a look at it with a section view, let's get the correct section view. We can pull this down and have a look. And yes, it's cut through both parts. If you open up either part in its own window, so I open up the oil pan part, notice it doesn't have any holes in it at all. And the same thing will be true if I Control-Tab to get back to the assembly. If I look at the engine block, it doesn't have any mounting holes for the oil pan there either. That's because these features are all created in the context of the assembly at the assembly level, and so they would only show up on an assembly drawing. That is the essence of an assembly feature. Let's create one more. I'm going to hide this journal bearing, and I'm also going to hide the crankshaft. In order to make sure that these holes are highly concentric, they might be chamfered only after being fixtured in place, and so we can use an assembly feature such as a chamfer to break this edge on both parts. Again, if you look at the individual part in its own window, that chamfer doesn't show up. Neither edge is broken. You can only see it when in the context of the assembly. Assembly features allow you to get your workflow correct, because you wouldn't want to show features on a part that don't exist until it's assembled together with other parts.